Recording started, Chair.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Policy and Finance Committee meeting, 10th December 2025. Let me get the agenda from here. So just to start the meeting, I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded in accordance with the Council's recording meetings policy. Recording will be uploaded on the Council's website in due course. There are no members of the public present, so I won't mention that one. Respectful conduct is expected at all times. Disruptive behaviour will not be tolerated, and the chair may intervene and ask individuals to leave in order to maintain order. Councillor Biffin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Going back to agenda item number 3325 at the beginning, register of interest and dispensations, given what we've actually just discussed, probably ought to be best if I declare that I'm actually an Eastleigh councillor, and obviously Eastleigh council have gone through this, but actually for the record, I've actually looked at this with an open mind, and have made my comments based on what is actually, and what I actually think is best for Eastleigh Town Council and its residents.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clark.
What he said plus county council. Sorry, I don't need to go through that through saying exactly the same thing. So.
No, we'll record those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, we need a proposal then to Councillor.
I'm happy to propose what we have just discussed, and to protect our clerk from our ramblings, to make sure she actually understood them, to actually review the open text before the actual document is actually submitted for clarity.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Richardson. All those in favour? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Right. Next item is policies and procedures. To receive and review the policies to be approved prior to the end of the council year to comply with statutory requirements. Now, just to clarify, I believe this is to receive a list of the policies that need to be approved rather than the policies themselves. Wonderful. Thank you. So we have received that list. Does anybody have any questions, queries on that list? Councillor Biffin.
I noticed that there are there are a number that are due for review in May 2026. I'm actually also very aware that actually in early May 2026, then Eastleigh Town Council is up for all-up elections, and you could end up with a completely brand new set of councillors. It's possible. So I just wonder the wisdom of actually reviewing policies in May 2026 with the timescales, but also I'm also aware there might be some, and I'm looking at financial regulations that may have to be reviewed in May 2026 through because of some legal reason. But whether or not the accessibility statement, for instance, or co-option needs to be reviewed in May 26, I don't know. Of course, the other one that may be a legal thing may be the standing orders.
Can I just ask, when it says review, is that actually when it will be reviewed, or is that the expected date that it will be adopted?
No, the due review is when, so we will review them annually. So that is when they are due to be annually reviewed, because it's.
But a review could take anything from an hour to several weeks or months. So what I mean is that the deadline for a meeting to actually approve that a review has happened and that those policies have been updated, or is that a window within which we will be reviewing them for them to be later approved?
Can I request we take an action to just take this offline?
Okay.
There are, as the point that Councillor Bicknell made, there are only 3 statutory elements that you have to reapprove at the annual meeting, which is the adopted code of conduct, the financial regulations and the standing orders. So they will be reapproved or referred by a new council for review, because that council actually wasn't prepared to reapprove them and therefore put them into a review loop. But we also need to look at the review frequencies as well. We are working independently a lot at the moment, so it's just a case of looking at and probably providing some suggested frequencies as to some policies only need 2 yearly, 3 yearly reviews unless legislation changes. So if we can take that as an action, it's nice to have it as an Excel spreadsheet, because all this information was provided elsewhere, but now we've got it like this, we can actually see it, and it's evidenced in the debate.
Thank you very much to the officers for preparing it. Okay, thank you. In which case, I believe we'll now on to the big item of the meeting, which is the budget 26-27. Seek for review and approval proposal to council. And this is where I assume I hand over to the clerk to take us through this.
Well, if I was you, I would.
I wasn't planning to do it myself, but I'll give it a go if you want. Oh, we've got a presentation.
Right. I genuinely started writing a paper, and then I stopped and thought I could write this forever. So I've tried to put it into a process, and then obviously we'll go into the spreadsheet so you've got more information. It is 25, 26, 27 because I'm going to refer to the end of this year as well as 26, 27 going forward. So where we sit here today, the Policy and Finance Committee on the 22nd of October put together the budget assumptions, which were then resolved to propose to full council. That happened on the 19th of November. They didn't amend them. You amend them in the meeting, and they didn't amend them since. Since then, the Planning Committee has met and resolved their budget to propose to P&F for inclusion. Asset Committee met on the 2nd of December, and they resolved the budget to propose to Policy and Finance. And Personnel Committee met on the 3rd of December, and they resolved their budget to included. So just as a review, there's some elements in here that were assumptions. We had a projected rate of 2.5%. We were going to be mindful of the financial pressures, so we weren't just going to release the restrictions, so to speak, and put things up just for the sake of it, or to add extra money to the reserves. We were going to provide for the assets transfers, which is what the Asset Committee have done. We were going to build in the grants, etc., etc. As you can see, so all of those assumptions have actually been taken and used in the work of calculating the budget. The planning budget for next year is a beautiful £2,500. That's it. But they are planning on putting into reserves to use for next year. Please correct me on this one, Deputy Clerk. The £6,000 for the crossing patrols provision, the £2,500 for the safety campaign, and they're intending to overspend on the speed indicator devices in year by £1,650 because they have got some space from the Community Safety Speed Watch budget of that amount, because the speed indicator devices costings at £850 is not the whole truth. That's how much it costs to purchase them, but it doesn't cost that to move them and put them up and take them down and get the data. So that's an additional cost.
Okay.
So in effect, they are being very efficient by not asking for a lot of money next year because they're keeping a lot of their money from this year into reserves.
Okay.
I will share this presentation with you, and it actually has the link to the budget underneath it, but you've got that in the main budget. The asset, and I'm just giving you the top levels. So asset, we demonstrated where the special expense income retained as well as new. So if you remember, we took some special expenses across last year, or abatement of special expenses last year. The asset budget proposes to keep that abatement of special expenses, so that's why this total is higher than that which you see in the overall budget. We also demonstrated the officer costs, which are charged against one single cost centre. We can at some point look at, should this committee decide to go to true cost centre accounting, so we split out the costs. In the asset budget we did give those, and you'll have seen that on the tab, as grey lines, so they don't necessarily affect anything, they're not really. When we'd finished with transfer from reserves and to reserves, we actually had a net movement of £3,209.99. Exactly how it fell out, so the officer team left it at that point, and the asset committee also didn't see any point in fiddling around with the numbers to change that. But what's changed? Since those dates, on the 10th of December, that would be this morning, we were notified that there are 2p implications with the transfer of energy youth, and there are 2p implications with the public toilets. We have no further information, but how that will impact on the costs of those assets, we won't know until we have more information.
Councillor Bicknell?
You say you don't know how it will impact on the cost of those two assets. So, with the 2p for the public toilets, I'm assuming that's a member of staff to clean them, which we would have to pay for anyway. And energy use, I'm going to guess that that is an element of the facilities team that may go in to energy, and possibly, which we'd have to pay for anyway to clean it and such like. The difference with energy is, I guess, about the provider, but I think we will pay that anyway. So how, if we've costed them anyway,
It's just the money's getting paid to them.
the fact that
I think that the issue here, because it's cheapy, is because we can come up with our own costings based on employing staff new, but that's not necessarily what the terms are of the people who are already employed.
right, yeah. So therefore,
And we can't discuss the detail of that.
No,
We don't have
I'm
the
not
detail
going
of
to.
that. So
Yeah, and I wasn't going to go into sort of technicalities, but based on what you said, then I guess this means that because there is a 2p element, we don't know whether that 2p element will actually be above or below our costings. Because we've costed all these things out anyway.
We've costed them up on a certain assumption of how that service will be delivered. This is a completely different scenario, and until we get the costs of it, it could be more, it could be less. Both of them will impact the budget,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's not. That's
There's not much we can do about that because we don't have the info.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have also today at our meeting questioned the special expenses, notified that we're coming across and asked for more of a breakdown. We've questioned the gap between what the special expenses are and what the total real cost that it's cost EBC to deliver that services, with a challenge brought by multiple councils of a mitigation for passing of savings, because there is a difference between what's being charged to the residents and what the cost of providing that service is, and because of that, the parishes in some cases are struggling to actually come out with a figure that works. It's not necessarily totally applicable to us, as you've seen by the overall budget. We've managed to work the figures in and out and come out with a reasonable level that is able to adjust based on the reserves that the council has. But those are things that some decisions could be quite significant as far as our budget's concerned.
okay.
All of that in place, based on the assumptions, the budget assumptions that were signed off, based on the assumptions we've had to make, and based on the information that we had at the time. Remember, all of this has got to be put together last week. This week's a completely new world. We are looking at figures where we are this year in forecast looking at ending, as we stand today, based on forecasts where we assume we'll spend everything that we've got in the budget. We are 4 months away from knowing where we're going to be. We are currently saying we'll have a deficit. I don't believe that we will, and I think as a committee we need to view that. But we are definitely moving next year to a proposed budget in the region of 1.4 million in income and expenditure, and we will need to use some money from reserves to mitigate that. Therefore, when you come through that, you have the figures on the precept, and I've tried to show you the underlying precept, or these are the underlying preset figures with the additional special expense abatement element put into the budget. So we currently are 77.57 for a Band A. To balance the budget with the special expenses as proposed, it would rise to £81.96, which is 8.5 pence a week, and 5.76 uplift for Eastleigh Town. Boyett Wood is a different figure, and there's no getting away from that fact. Therefore, theirs would go up 61% in real terms to actually join at the same level as Eastleigh Town.
Are we having to? Are they both meant to match?
It's
When
one
are we joining
council.
together?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but because they're different councils when they're deciding this, that it's still what I'm saying is it has to be the same amount irrespective.
So the
Because we're joining
reorganisation
together
order has
means-
been written.
So always
The
has
only
to be-
council that will issue a precept demand is Eastleigh Town Council.
Right. So even though it's decided by different councils,
It
They
isn't.
this year,
They don't get to decide
No.
a budget because they don't.
They're not
They
gonna
won't
exist.
be in existence to actually
yeah,
set a
that's
precept demand.
yeah, that's I assumed that was the
Yeah.
case, but I was just
But it would be disingenuous, I believe, to actually just press on ahead and say, well, this is the impact on Eastleigh Town, 5.76%. You're all happy with that? Let's move on.
and it's not worried about what it would. Yes.
So the year-on-year comparatives won't show on the council tax letter because Eastleigh Town will actually be set up as a new Eastleigh Town, a larger area. So last year will be greyed out. There'll be no year-on-year percentage. And already the identified council services that ETC delivers will be expanded to Boyett Wood. So that's greening, family support worker, Friday night football, warm hubs, events, safety projects, speed indicator devices, and the list goes on. So there are real benefits that are coming across to them, and they've already asked for the family support worker to be costed up to go into their
We're
schools.
not doing any of those things.
No.
Right.
Of course, the other thing is as well, we don't know here in this meeting as councillors, but I'm assuming that Boyett Wood Parish is taking on some assets anyway, because actually we're going to have to start running their allotments. And there are areas of Boyett Wood, Long Road play area for Long Road, for instance. So I'm sure that
That's
they're
all
taking-
being costed in.
that
That's
they're
all
taking on.
included in.
So all this is all going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
It's all being costed in,
Yeah.
and any other assets they may be taking.
These are all the good things that will help to sell it to the residents of Boyett Wood, because
Yeah.
that is quite a hefty increase. But if we can say, and this is what you're getting for that money,
So they have requested, they previously requested Lawn Road Recreation Ground. They are now requesting their associated verges. Our assets officer is in a meeting with their clerk on Monday to ensure that that process is seamless to come across and it fits with how we've costed it up and what we've agreed to.
What other areas of green?
Well, if you think of driving down
Sure,
Shakespeare
walking,
Avenue,
No, I
there's
don't know
quite a lot.
what we're asking.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Everything except for the countryside sites on the Boyett Wood.
Bit that runs out along the
Yeah, the one that runs
there's a lot
on
of
the
verges
side.
and things like that. But
But there's a big green bit in the sort of wood area.
Is that Lawn Road?
No, not
No.
on road. No, that's like
No.
in the park itself. But there's like a green open space between.
What are you talking about? Up by Chartwell.
Yeah,
That's all in Albrook.
No, was it?
But don't forget the Albrook boundary
Yeah, it does,
comes
doesn't
in
it?
along, comes in
It
around
does. Yeah, it just does. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that,
It does.
I
Okay.
just wanted to check though,
Yeah.
just to clarify, the
It's right on that border.
figures that you've included there is effectively excluding all the special expenses.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
so it's not what the actual
So,
cost will be.
yeah, so the actual figure that we would levy is more than that, because it would be that plus what's currently levied as special expenses.
It is, but the legislation under preset demand for the parish town level for our tier says that we are allowed to actually report it excluding devolution costs, because that would never come under the referendum principle anyway. Then that is an exemption.
Okay.
So transfer. We won't. We will see when the budget comes on. It actually clearly states what the total preset demand will be. But if you remember last year, what we said was the underlying preset level actually went down, and all we did was took the section, the service special expense abatement area.
People are going to see the
Over.
EPC portion of their bill reduce quite dramatically by moving across the special expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's,
Absolutely.
and they have committed at EBC, haven't they, to put a communication in with the council tax bill which clearly states
Yes.
what is happening and why
Yeah.
there is such a
Is the
change.
And
the,
how?
the main thing I'm wondering is whether, when you take into account that transfer special expenses, if that has any impact on the dramatic difference between ETC and Boywood, because obviously they have a different level of special expenses to us, so, which I assume is actually lower, but for their council tax base, I don't know whether that makes it better or worse. That's all I'm wondering is, how will it feel to...
I will
Yeah,
answer that
absolutely.
question when I get the specific information. So the
Okay.
information that's been provided to me is, as you will see from the tax-based documentation, they've literally squished us together and moved forward. They've done exactly the same with the special expenses abatement. So we have asked for that to be broken up.
Thank you.
The forecast for 25-26 is impacted by the fact that we do need to buy the capital equipment before the 1st of April, because the 1st of April will be too late. When we take over the maintenance of those sites, we don't want everybody sitting on the bottom saying, wow, it's 3 weeks wait till the digger comes or the ride-on. We can mitigate that one further by a transfer from the acquisition reserve if this committee deems that's required as we track towards the end of the year on forecast. We are pulling forward obviously the recruitment for the greens and grey team facilities and grounds, I would say, but we call them green and grey, so that they are also ready for the 1st of April handover. That was approved by the Personnel Committee. That's to a value of £26,503.57 and an additional £6,222 for the recruitment fee. So that actually means that in our total personnel budget for 25-26 we are left with £890 money in the bank by bringing those forward.
Can I just clarify, that is by using a lot of the money that was left over because we don't have a finance officer at the moment. So we're
You're looking at
effectively
it.
using, yes, that money.
And as I say, mitigation movements from reserves should be looked at close to the year end is what I would say on that one for in year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the headlines, pull out the headlines. The one thing that is going to be seen is the salary and wages budget, which has gone up somewhat, to be honest with you. But it's gone up for a reason, which is that council admin in 25-26 was 61% and services was 3%. In 26-27, council admin is 33% of the precept and 36% of that precept cost is services. When you equate that to total admin or total income, obviously it's less, but you can't manage green spaces without greens people unless you do services. So it's a terrifying jump. There's no getting away from it, but at the same time it is actually a figure that is moving the right way for the administrative side of things and the right way for the service side of things. And just as a quick comparative as to what everybody else's percentages are, Hedge End Town Council for this current year, their salaries and wages budget is 680,000 as against £1 million worth of precept, which is 65%. We were 64%. And our Unfair Oak, theirs is larger, theirs is 83%. So it's not to justify it, but it's to explain it more than anything else.
I think that's to be expected really, because you can't deliver anything without people. So the bulk of our spending really ought to be on wages, I would have thought. So, thank you.
Impact on, sorry.
It's useful to have that benchmark as well.
Impact on reserves, that's a really busy slide, but as you can see, the staff growth and acquisition is steadily moving its way down with money being taken out of it as proposed in the budget. We've got then the additional commuted sums coming in which are under restricted reserves. The one element that is under there is the cemetery grant income. I don't know if you'd all picked up that comment from the budget, which is, I don't know how much the grant of rights income is. We've not been notified from EBC, but it's irrelevant anyway because you should put it away to make sure you can maintain your cemetery for the 30 years that you've just given on a deed. So whilst it isn't necessarily a restricted reserve in true form, it should always be viewed as a restricted reserve by the council. And if at some point there's no space left in the cemetery, it is money that you could use to actually set up a new cemetery, purchase land and do the work that's associated. So we're still growing reserves. Part of that comes from the fact that we're in those figures are the figures that came in from Boyett Wood, so they're estimated reserves that they'll have at the end of the year, and you see that breakdown in the reserves tab of the big budget, the workbook. You're still going to sit on £739,000 at the end of it all, so you've still got a healthy balance.
And actually that's when we've been setting previous budgets. We've been very prudent and very sensible and very forward thinking, knowing that we would be taking on assets, not knowing we'd be taking on this quantity this quickly, but we always knew we'd be taking on assets. And actually what the plan was to always try and keep the precept as smooth as possible, so we didn't have to spike it right up when we actually suddenly realised, we need a tractor and someone to sit on it to cut the grass. And we haven't budgeted for that.
This is why we've done what we've done.
And
It's what's worked.
we've done it gradually, slowly. We put the money aside to actually, and then to use that money to smooth the process of taking on assets for the benefit of our residents. I think those that may have been critical, I think we can sort of now point to this and say, well, we were right all along.
It'd be like somebody says, I told you so.
Yeah.
Actually, with all this with Boyett Wood, at the end of the day, we could have saved ourselves a lot of grief, but I did tell them,
So
they didn't listen.
the only area that won't necessarily tick the box, but is the general reserve, which should be set at 3 months. The budget assumption said that you would hold it as 3 months. Putting ETC and Boyett Wood general reserve funds together gives you 281,000, which is 20%. Yeah. Oh, sorry, 20.68. You should have 281, but you have got. Let me have a look. Hold on a minute. I didn't write that down. You will have a general reserve of 233,226. Yeah. You should have 281. But you do have 215,000 sat in unrestricted reserves above that general reserve. So the real key element would be whether or not you are financially viable should disasters hit you. Well, yes, you are, because you have your general reserve of 223 and you have 215,000 allocated for other things. I accept that, but they're not restricted to those other
So they
things.
can be moved around.
If you need that money, it is
Yeah.
available for you to
Yeah.
take.
I couldn't see it there, but what's the reserves amount that that's going to come to the new council from Boyett Wood?
I'll show you that on the spreadsheet.
Okay.
I didn't pull it across onto this. Right.
You don't need to take the
Oh, okay.
Questions, or do I go on to the spreadsheet? The only other thing that I put on here was last year what we did was we tried to put together how everything fits together in council tax. I can't find data that actually hangs together this year, so that's maybe something that you and I need to look at.
Okay.
But that is repeated by a few of the other clerks today in the meeting, which is that the data that was publicised about how much the council tax is. So this is the data that comes directly from EBC website, which is in 25-26. These are the percentage splits for Eastleigh, and for Eastleigh town area, the council tax for a bandy is £2,223 and a few pennies. But when you do split those splits down, the special expenses are wrong, or the ETC precept is wrong, or the EBC precept is wrong. It doesn't actually add together. So we have asked for clarification. It could be a simple rounding error, which is they've gone for whole percentages. So it could be 71.6, it could be 12.6, it could be 5 point. So there could be some bits in the gap.
Could that also be because I suspect they've done one leaflet for the whole of the borough, so where actually each parish is charging a different precept and each parish has a different level of special expenses, they've kind of taken an average across the borough?
Could be.
It could be
It
a
could be.
generic one.
Yeah.
So we just need to get some clarification on that, because that's been very useful to allow people to see how things have moved across.
Well, happy to work with you on that one.
Okay. So
Right.
all of that came from this. I
Of course.
really don't suggest that you go line by line, but I'm happy to answer questions. Obviously, as you know, the one that's not there is budget overview, because it's got this great big yellow thing there saying will not use complete prior to the meeting. I should say prior to the council meeting, because there's so many things changing. I'm really not pivoting all the detail into the overview, but we will, because that's what we do. The new tab we've put in there is forecast, which is something we've been working on. It was started by our finance officer before she left, and we've been enjoying ourselves in there, haven't we? So all of the forecast columns are actually related to that. So if we change one, it changes through. Tax-based data is what ABC have given us, and we are challenging, spotted by Councillor Clifton, that if you add that up, it's 8,325.62, and if you look at that, it's 8,469.98. So we'll see. I believe that the date might be wrong on that, was what came through to that 597,558.
You think it might be last year's?
I
or
believe
this
so.
year's?
Yeah, this year's. Special expenses. Now I have left you my spreadsheet up here, yeah? Obviously in there you can see some indications as to what Boyett Woods would be, because there is a gap. So if you look at, for instance, community safety, we've been charged 18.5. When we were together as one, we were charged 36. So it's fair to assume that they've also got a special expense of 18.5.
Yeah.
When you look at play areas, we were charged 62. We dropped to 55. We've gone to 56. So there was a 7-8 grand gap there for the small play area that's in Lawn Road. But all they told us was that we're going to reduce it by £433,513.17. That was it.
For both areas.
For both.
For the new
And
area,
I
so
need to
speak.
work out
Yeah.
where that adds up to, because as you can see, I'd added up 392,000 with the things we were taking over, which means that actually for Boyett Wood they were looking at £41,000. Don't know if that's the right figure or not. Yeah. Reserves
that-
tabs. Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say that 5118, that's roughly what the special expense portion of EBC's bill will reduce by. So people will see, subject to any EBC increase, obviously about 50 quid come off their
Yeah.
EBC invoice.
And strange, if you add that 51.18 to £81.69, it gives you the total charge. Reserves tab, obviously that gives you the answers that you're asking. So I've broken out what Boyett would have currently. So that's their reserves that they've got, and then those are the commuted sums that I was notified as well.
Just while we're on that one, the Boyett Wood one, Boyett Wood reserves, that says 24-25. So is it that it's the same this year? Or
I haven't got the
you
figures.
haven't got it?
I was
Okay.
just given those figures, so I've made the assumption that that's.
Okay.
There's a lot at the moment, assumptions and information that I need.
So there's actually a big unknown here, because that was the general reserve at the end of last year, but obviously we've had a whole other financial year, so that's going to change.
I'm
isn't
led
it?
to believe it will be positive rather than negative.
Which is what?
I'm led to believe.
That's a good one.
On the commuted sums there, Bruce, those commuted sums, in theory, need to be used in those areas because that's what they were given for. But they're not restricted as to what they can be used for, are they?
No.
So, for argument's sake, we've got. I was going to say that. So we could do some youth work in, say, Charrington and Ovington if we had a youth worker, and use some of that 45,000 to employ a youth worker, and we could take some money out of Drone and Sirocco Park to employ a youth worker and bounce them across too, couldn't we? And things like that. I just pulled youth worker because it's quite a simple thing to say. But you could do things like
benefit the
that,
whole area,
that
but
would then,
spread
you know,
across.
use those community sums to employ or do something. You can.
I wish you'd get out of my head, Chair.
Sorry.
Because you will see down on the overall budget when you come down to have I gone past it? No, there we are, projects. I've had to put some assumptions in here of income, which is that we are deep in conversation with the local area committees. All of the parishes are deep in conversation with the local area committees, and we are led to believe that that would not be an unreasonable sum. But there is no guarantee. And so, quietly in the background, knowing the point that Councillor Bicknell has made, I had thought that it could be mitigated, should it not be received, it could be mitigated by use of the commuted sums.
As long as
In the manner in
Yeah.
which Councillor
and
Bicknell
it could be
has.
it could be a number of
detail.
different things, but as long as a portion is used in A and B with that community sum, then
Yeah.
you're okay. But you could do. I was going to say set up a warm hub, but then that was going to be my initial example. But I'm thinking,
Not a lot of money, but yes.
well, no,
Yeah.
there's nowhere to actually put a warm
Yeah,
hub
so
in
yeah,
Cherrington.
there is
No.
In the Cherrington Road estate, you can't. There is nowhere for a warm hub, so
It's
that's
usually
fair.
like a pop-up
So
container.
Paul's
Yeah.
having in it.
Yeah.
So-
yeah.
So the 5k we've already received confirmation that runs then for the through to 27-28. We have already received notification that we have the 5,060 from the OPCC, and we are led to believe that our funding request for 10,000 for Connect Communities Fund is being favoured, but you don't know until it comes through. So that element is quite low. We do have 2 more funding opportunities that we've been notified about that would fund the youth programme. One of them a fairly significant one of them an incredibly easy one to try and get our hands on, so that is being worked at in the background. Obviously any mitigations of those may or may not come in time to actually impact the preset decision, but they would obviously put money into the bank to reserves for next year, etc., so that you can keep your steady line.
Wonderful.
Steady lines. Everything else we've broken down. So if you look at Asset Committee, as I explained, everything went through and explained the fact that, you know, on the cable works we retained it. The one thing about cable works is if you class in the retained uplift and the officer cost charged because it's reduced, actually cable works as an office will only as a whole building is forecast to only cost the council £967.50 next year, because we're bringing in a preschool downstairs who will
Cheap office, isn't it?
it's
Yeah.
cheaper than the other options. So this was all presented, obviously all the way down at the bottom end. That's where you get the figures that show what was in, what was out, and the resulting figure at the end.
Can I just ask a question? Beyond the preschool, what else are we getting any other income, either sporadic or regular, for the use of downstairs?
It's been a slow uptake. There's absolutely no denying that fact. It's a very interesting shape of hall. So we have had a local school using it for 4 afternoons a week. We have a couple of fitness classes in and a couple of independent parties that have booked it. So the parties are gently booking it. The preschool will not impact any of the evening classes nor the weekend bookings. And the school that's been using it has already expressed an interest in moving to our other community building that we will soon own, the Energy Youth Centre, because that's actually more convenient for them and doesn't require public transport to come from their school to here. So there are synergies, which is we don't lose that.
But it's
just
good
moves
to see
somewhere
that
else.
there is other things happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as people see it being used rather than shut up and dark, then that will attract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that preschool will obviously bring local families in, and when they're in, they'll then see it. And
Oh, I've got a kid's birthday party.
Okay.
Or
wouldn't this be
Right,
nice
or
rather than
whatever.
trashing the front
Especially if you
lounge?
put an advertising board in the foyer.
Idea just hadn't come to our head. One of the things we do need to acknowledge is the basis upon which the income has been calculated. Yeah. So the energy we have kept the rates. We retained the rates that were being charged by EBC for now. We need to look at those for an impact on the income should they be changed. Ground Cable Works obviously has been set, the office and the hall hire been set by this council. The allotment charges have been set by this council, and the cemetery we have retained. Now, the cemetery, this is the only one that is slightly different. So, the team that manage Brookwood Cemetery also manage Ramaley in Chandler's Ford. Chandler's Ford Parish Council have no wish to ask for Ramaley to be devolved to them, therefore it will be retained by EBC. EBC have no desire to continue maintaining and servicing and administrating that cemetery, and therefore what they have agreed is that they will pass that across to put the cemetery on there, very strange. Pass that across to Eastleigh Town Council, and we will charge them back for that service. So at the moment that will be a 50% of our total cost of maintaining the cemetery, and we will also have an ability for pre-approved works. So where we have a headstone that under memorial rules needs to be re-concreted and laid up, we will just go ahead with that as long as it's under £500. We will then at the end of the year provide EBC with a full income and expenditure report, and if there is a balance we will pay them the balance, and if there's a deficit they'll pay us the deficit.
And that's partly because we would, when we take that, we would be 2p'd over the members of staff that are currently managing both of those sites.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have we actually made a decision to do that as a council? Out of interest, to take both, effectively take management of both cemeteries.
The cemetery hasn't yet come across as a specific one. That would be a decision on the assets committee.
Okay.
But that's the choice. So it's either in its totality or it's out.
That's right. Okay, okay.
But in actual fact, the cemetery provides you with an income of £66,000. So you might want to.
Of which we still want to keep it to one side for future cemetery work.
Yeah, but you might still want to actually
Yeah.
consider that, because that income mitigates the impact of your precept. If you take that out, you've got to find another £60,000.
Yeah.
I'm not against the idea, I just wanted to check whether we
In principle, yes. It hasn't yet come to Asset Committee as a fully explained asset for acceptance. However, of all the assets the Assets Committee have taken on, it comes with a surplus, whereas others are more complicated and come with a loss. So
understood. Okay.
it will be anticipated. I have obviously put in there the projects and programmes. They're marked as new. Placemaking strategy, we are assuming that will actually get spent in this year. Friday night football, there will be some forecasted expenditure this year, but there is some next year. Family support worker, we've paid out already. Warm hubs is £400. So the youth employability, the community engagement hub are funded with the actual, that's the cost of putting it on, not the actual youth workers, because they're in the personnel structure. If you see there, you have the youth engagement officer and 2 youth workers to do the Friday night football as well, and also the youth club elements as well. Yeah. But that is offset with hopefully that 50,000 coming in up at the top. Heritage project, the personnel element of that is in under the heritage officer. as I said, I've made the assumption that everything has gone ahead. And then there is a £10,000 in-year spend, which is currently allocated against strategic reserve, but I've been notified in the last week that there's also a pot of money that I could probably go and retrieve for that as well, so that will be an application that we're putting in. Greening is the one element that, yes, the employer costs are under the personnel, but greening itself will actually fund itself next year because it's putting money into its reserve and it will take them out next year to spend on greening. That could be considerably higher because we have found another pot of funds there that we're waiting for funding for that one as well.
It's a very big sofa here.
It's amazing when you actually get some funding, people actually come to you and say, did you know you could have this as well?
That's good.
We even had the result on the Christmas event, which is having resisted contributing to it in any shape, form at the last wash-up meeting of the Christmas event. A significant partner said we should be able to find £10,000 for next year. So, all of that in the round, the whole thing ends up with the calculation that you've seen at the top, £81.96, but the total preset demand that will be shown will be £133.15. Now, hot off the press, Hedge End today told me that theirs was going up 4% to £136 per bandy. I know that doesn't affect your decision, but at least it means that you are amongst friends. I, Chair, with your permission, will take questions on this, but I actually don't think that this is a finished budget enough for you to propose this to Council. I have too many ins and outs that I still haven't got full figures on.
I think you've had too many things arrive today, for example.
I think that's a very fair contention. And also then saves me giving you detailed questions about some of the things I've found today. So, yeah, I think that makes sense. Do we have any questions, Councillor Richardson?
It's not a question, it's a comment. Can I just say thank you? Because I know how much work has gone into this and how many weeks and hours and late nights and ever-changing picture, the LGR, the CGR, it's just everything has fallen on you, and I'm amazed you've managed to come up with this, to be perfectly honest, in the time that you have. So
I'm amazed that it actually all
yes,
got out to the
so
top.
I just want to put on the record a huge thank you to you and all of the officer team that have worked on this, because it's an incredible amount of work in such a short space of time, and I don't know how you've done it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you win it then?
Yes, please do. That's a big one.
Again, it's comments rather than questions, because I sort of have a slightly different take. Some people on budgets, and some people would like to go through it line by line and ask you a question on every single line or what have you. I'm actually just more interested in the bottom line, because actually, when it comes to the actual spreadsheets, whilst they are good reference tools, at the end of the day, throughout the year, we can move money from wherever pot we want. Yeah, as long as it balances at the end of the day. The way I see this budget is sort of, well, we're starting again in reality, because we've got a lot of unknowns in the fact that we've got a new council. And to me, looking at it, we have, within the budget, we have an awful lot of flex. That's not including the reserves that we've got, because of things that, you know, the way we've controlled the budget and what we've done in the past. So I'm fairly confident, and you know, I'm as confident as you can ever be with the budget, because at the end of the day, the budget is the best estimate at one particular moment in time, at its very best. You know, I'm confident that we will have a budget that is not going to increase that pre-step by a huge amount. And actually, with the flex we've got in reserves, it'd be nice to see if we could, you know, what the budget would be if it was just what we said, CPI 2.5. What that would actually do to it. I don't know. Once you've crafted it as actual, just something you can put in that changes the whole lot and chucks out the last number. If it was just 2.5%, I don't know. It depends on you must be able to do that somehow without having to change every single line. But that would be the interesting thing, because as I say, there's a lot of flex in the budget and there's a lot of reserves.
I think it'd be quite easy to move something out of the acquisition budget straight into the asset bit, you know, for paying, cutting the grass and things like that. I think you could quite easily move a portion out of that pot into that.
But I mean, at the end
Or
of
the
the day,
alternative funding, that securing the funding.
yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, you know, it's councillors that have to decide on the budget based on the information that we've actually got in front of us. And you know, we can be minded to agree to it, we can be minded to actually go up, and we can be minded to go down, or just leave it as it is, so there's no increase. And there is flex in the budget with the reserves and that. And at the end of the day, some projects are not started, so one of the things you have to do in local government is prioritise. So actually, if it meant that there's some projects that couldn't go ahead because they're not started, then so be it. So there's lots of options there, is what I'm saying, to actually see what budget would be with just 2.5%. Might not work out because of what it would though. Because that's going to skew the figures all over the place because of the differentials. And they're going to have a big rise regardless of what you do. So it just might not be possible, but it'd be interesting if you can, if there's a quick way of doing it with, I don't know, just putting a number in a box and it changes everything, can't it?
Yes, you can simply just enter some transfer from reserves on the bottom figure and it changes it.
I think, kind of following on from that point, I am very conscious of the impact on Whitewood residents, and I would be tempted to suggest that even if it means that actually we almost take a decrease compared to previous, then I think we should at least look at it to see what kind of impact that's going to have, particularly if we've got that flexibility within the budget that's before us. The other thing that occurs to me as perhaps an alternative to doing that is thinking about can we provide any additional enhancement to our plans that would be specific to the Boyerwood area, where we're kind of offering a better...
They're already getting a lot of extra things that we would be providing them, have been provided.
Quite a lot on came to the Christmas event.
And I understand what you mean.
Yeah, no, I do.
I would say, Chair, that question was asked, and was asked in a Boyerwood meeting. There were no ideas forthcoming. So they were presented with the list that you've seen this evening, with these are what we've already expanded or made provision for expansion in your area. Thank you very much, was the response. There has been no
Ask for anything
ask
over and above.
for anything over and above, no.
For clarity, that's Boyerwood Parish Council at the Parish Council meeting, right?
It is,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you. Okay. I still wonder whether we could be...
They could do the
offer
community
us
building
something extra.
somewhere in Boyerwood, but I think that's beyond our scope.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Can I
Well, perhaps
Can I make one
actually,
comment?
that's an interesting point.
There's nowhere there available when you can't
What
build.
if we... I mean, it's probably too big a gap, but what if we put some of that gap into an earmark reserve that we could start to build with a view to creating some kind of a community building in that area in the future?
I don't know how you put money that you say you don't want to charge
No,
into a gap.
No, this is the difference. I'm saying my view is either we avoid charging it, or if we feel like there's not an option but to charge it, then can we mitigate that effect?
Well, only by affecting the bottom line.
Yeah, I understand that.
So then the totality will go up.
It's what kind of a deal are we offering to the people who live in Boyerwood is not very clear to me from this at the moment, and I think a Boyerwood resident would be even less sure about what they're getting out of this. So I just think that we need to be very clear about.
Well, you've got to remember that theirs would go up anyway. So they have a tax. They have a tax base of. Had a tax base. It's not shown, is it? Oh yes, it is. Okay, of 2,350. Let's just assume theirs was going to go up at least £17.80 simply for taking over the assets. If they follow the same method, theirs would go up £17.80 for taking over the assets that were being transferred across that they'd asked for, if they could actually provide those service on those assets at the same cost that EBC were charging for special expenses. Yeah. So that's the special expense abatement level.
Yeah.
That's all the information that I've taken a guess there, which is it was 61,000 the gap I believed, but I've calculated we're taking 397 that we know of, but there's 433, therefore it's about 40 grand or so a gap.
I appreciate that we don't have the details of all of that.
So theirs would move anyway from the 5106 to potentially £70 if they believe that if they were independent and they believe that they could provide that community asset service for that amount of money. And the area that the impact hits harder, which we had today, is when it's small parishes moving over £40,000-50,000 against a small precept actually has a big impact. And they also aren't set up. So for us, taking on the additional verges and green areas and Lawn Road is just 2 more days structured into the rota that's been put together to actually, deliver up of, one of the 8 teams, for instance, 4 teams, etc. For them, it's do you go out and get it at a Monday of £200 to £300 a day, or do you try and have a person that does it on their own, and then you've got the issue with lone working and the equipment that they have to buy. So
basically, we're giving them economies of scale.
There would be impacts if they stayed alone, and it's a case of explaining those impacts to them. It's showing them the difference of where they're coming from to where they're going to and what they're getting. So in that case, 51 to 81 isn't a massive jump.
Okay.
Significantly higher than they would jump anyway.
I just think we need to. I'm just very conscious of it, and I think we need to be very clear about, in our communications, about that kind of to offer effectively what's happening there. I appreciate it's too early to put those figures together, and I'm not saying that won't happen, but at the same time I'm also saying that it doesn't look at the moment like there's going to be, for the average resident of that area, they're not going to feel like they're getting much more. So I think it's just something to be conscious of in the way that we're setting the budget going forward. That's what
it's kind of that point. This is why we've absolutely, with the budget this year, we have got to get the comms right around this.
yes.
Both that's in terms of what EBC send out with the precept, with the council tax bill, plus any other subsequent comms that we decide as a council to put out on our own, which I think we must do this year. I think a proper comms plan needs to come with this budget this year, and whether that is we get Royal Mail to deliver something to every single house and take the hit this year, but we've got one opportunity to get the comms right on this, and it's really critical that we do it.
We might be able to put a flyer in if, I know, because EBC do a lot of online stuff, don't they?
The only way to do it is actually to take the hit and do a complete fulfilment into an envelope to say to the homeowner, otherwise they will get delivered with
And I would
Poundland
strongly be
vouchers.
in favour of doing that and taking a hit in this 1 year, because we've got to get it right.
Perhaps as well, as part of that, we could use it to advertise the parish meeting and sort of an invitation. You want to find out more about what is that we're delivering for this? What does it mean for these councils coming together as one council going forward?
I
Come
think
along to this
we
meeting.
council also need to come on board with some comments too, because they're the ones that initiated it. Because if they hadn't agreed to it, we wouldn't be sat here now. So they have a role to play.
Yeah.
And get the clerks talking. Sure they already are.
A lot.
Well, the clerks are talking, but I mean, what I mean is the council as a whole. Boyle would have got to sort of, as a council, they've got to back this budget at the end of the day, because because in effect, they're the one that drag their residents into it. Because if they said no,
But
We
we
won't
have to go
let
through
you
the
out.
same process as what we are with it.
No, because they're not setting a budget.
So
'Cause
we are setting the budget because they're
we set the budget,
okay.
yeah.
So they just don't have this,
And they knew it was being set this evening.
and they're not here. Okay.
Okay, so
I think we've done with this.
yeah, the way forward is obviously we're not actually going to make a recommendation in this meeting. So what are the next steps for us as the committee?
We probably need a interim committee date for this committee to meet, to allow things to have fallen out the other end, so to
because
speak.
it says here, receive, review and approve.
Yes.
So actually, this committee has got to approve something to go to full council. We can't approve this for reasons that Clark's already said.
We can prove to defer by calling another meeting.
Yeah.
Once we have more clarity over the figures.
And that sounds to me, that sounds as if that's sort of like a work in progress.
Yeah.
Rather than, we've set a date now, we're sort of,
When?
When?
Well, we do have a policy and finance meeting in February, and we were already talking earlier about a meeting and another council meeting after that to then agree the budget. So it could be that February the 11th or whatever.
I wonder if that's too late. As in, it will be too close to the full council meeting to give full council the opportunity to actually scrutinise this before they make an agreement.
Can we take the decision on the date offline? Do that?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Just,
I don't think we need to discuss it.
No.
No.
it's fine. Okay.
It will depend on some timelines that obviously
Yeah.
I've got to try and put together as to when we think we'll get decisions through for funding, etc.
Okay.
We have notified today to the community assets meeting that we're in that we will probably be taking it right up to the deadline of our statutory time to give them our precept demand, but actually by law we can give them an indicative demand level at that point as well, and say that we aren't still ready to issue you the final demand. Boroughs and districts don't like that, but
Understood.
this one has to go down as an exception.
And unfortunately, we are reliant on some of their figures, so if they would like us to get it sooner, then it is on them to provide us with that information sooner.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think I'm not sure we actually need to resolve that, do we? So it's an action for the clerk to find another date for us to meet before full council in January/February, whichever it's going to end up on the timeline.
Yeah.
So I think it's just thanks to all the work that's been prepared in the budget, and we will review it again when it's ready to be proposed.
Can I ask in the intervening gap any questions are sent through?
Absolutely.
Because they may be questions that can be answered that aren't dependent on any other information that I'm waiting for coming through.
No problem. In which case, date of the next meeting is 11th of February, but potentially soon. Actually, close the meeting.